Right, it's working.
So I have to put the YouTube link into the messenger and then we can all share it.
And then we'll all share it.
On Facebook.
So this isn't live on Socialist Think Tank. It's just on YouTube.
It's live on YouTube.
On the Socialist Think Tank channel of YouTube.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
so for anybody who is watching back at this after it's gone out live, hello. We are experiencing some technical difficulties. I have broken the internet. I am sorry. The newest thing on my Twitter is I'm being accused of being an Antifa extremist for using the phrase "no pasaran." Just so,
Dear me.
I'm like, okay, we need to do some learning about the Spanish Civil War right now. Oh my
Just
God.
change it a little bit. Knee pasaran.
Knee pasaran.
Knee pasaran.
Knee pasaran. Right, okay, so...
Think about it being a Yorkshire mother. There'll be no pasaraning around here tonight.
No pasaran in here, man. Yes.
No pasaraning.
Right,
I'm going to share the YouTube. Sorry.
You got it?
It's so
Yeah.
cute.
I'm sharing it in the group for us.
I see us. I see us.
Right, I'm going to have a quick check on... We have one person watching.
Hello to that one person.
Hello, it might be me.
Oh, hey.
So we'll give it a second and we'll see if we can get a few more in.
Have you posted it on our page, Paul?
I've tried. So just in case anyone is watching, we've had some difficulties with going on to Facebook Live tonight. I don't know if it's a problem with Facebook or at our end, but we're live on YouTube instead.
Hello, YouTube world.
There we go. Yes, that's my theory, because everybody's been moved over to new Facebook today. So they've been tinkering around with the tubes that tie the Facebook together, and it's obviously Zoom hasn't caught up yet. That's what I would assume. Yes.
So I think at quarter
You're
past
on?
we should just start.
Yes, well, you're already on, so you might as well.
And this isn't the most...
You ready?
There's seven watching.
Hey!
Put some messages down. Tony Brim's given us a little clap. He's found us. So that's
Thank
good.
you.
So at least we've got seven.
Can somebody, Laura,
Yeah.
can you send that link to Simon Hocking, who's joining us as our listener guest?
It's the same YouTube
It'll be
link.
still this. It'll still be.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, it can still be the same Zoom link, won't
But
it?
if
Yes.
you want to
Yes.
engage with us in a most dynamic way.
Right here, are we ready to roll? Are we ready to rock it?
Almost, but I do want to do something. If you want our jingles, I'd better get Jingle Palette up.
Get the jingle palette up.
Cheers, Facebook.
This has been fun.
Zuckerberg
Such fun.
hates lefties, that's what it is.
Before the meeting. It's typical, it's sort of the team. You see the dream team here in action.
And at the moment, we're just dreaming. But yeah, we're all good to go.
Down at the bottom of my screen, in his cowboy shirt,
Cowboy shirt.
Oh,
Rustling.
am I in a cowboy shirt? Yeah, it's me. Hello.
And then sort of Laura, you've got wearing a Women's Banner Group T-shirt.
Yes, designed by the wonderful Samantha Townsend herself.
Welcome, Laura Lieberman. And the most dangerous woman on board today is Sam. Welcome, Sam. Hello.
Hello.
And
Beware.
last but not least, sort of, and sort of suffering withdrawals because, of course, his fan club will be scrambling to get onto YouTube to watch him. Stuart Sutherland, hello.
Hello.
Bless you. Okay, I'm just going to plow on and leave Paul struggling with the IT. Sam, moment.
Yes.
Hang on, I could have done that, John.
Okay,
we are there.
Go,
We
man.
are there. I'm moments from being able to do it anyway. Here we go.
That moment of the week.
Sam, moment of the week.
Can I just check, Laura, are you still going to talk about the thing you said you were going to talk about, or are you
Yes.
switching? Right, okay. I'm going to switch mine.
Thank you. I was hoping you would.
So the thing that has been announced from Matt Hancock, which is that the NHS is going to fund for people like me to go on shake and meal replacement diets.
So first this sort of self-shaming, I'm not having that sort of. But he has made an you're absolutely right, a very shocking. Carry on.
Yes. So the idea is that he's going to help people lose weight or treat their diabetes if they've got it, with a very low calorie meal replacement system. Now, if you actually ask people who want to lose weight why they can't lose weight, they will tell you things like it's difficult to access gyms, I feel uncomfortable participating in public exercise, fruit and vegetables are expensive, ready meals are cheap. And I'm not getting into this whole, oh, well, you can buy a bag of porridge that can feed you for a week argument. That's just ridiculous. But that's something that gets thrown around a lot. You know, yes, it's possible to buy our meat and some vegetables and eat it in various different permutations through the week. But when you're in a situation like I can only speak for myself. I've got 3 kids. 2 of them have got autism and they've got different sensory and food things. So we're constantly cooking 2 or 3 different meals. It's just overwhelming. So I'm very much in favour of bringing in things to help people lose weight if they want to. And it's a good thing for society for people to get fitter and healthier. But we need to look at what the actual causes of obesity in our society are, and whether this is a good way to solve it. I would urge Matt Hancock to take the money he's going to spend on these meal replacement systems and spend them on leisure centres, providing free opportunities for exercise, investing in grassroots sport, you know. For example, in Bishop Auckland, we've got a table tennis club who do fantastic work with disabled people who maybe can't get exercise any other way. You know, there's loads of ways to think outside the box. And as well as this, we're already seeing people in the weight loss and diet and fitness industry saying switching people to these extremely low calorie diets is a recipe for eating disorders, and it's no good, doesn't teach you anything about how to cook properly and what the calorific intake of actual foods are. So boo for that idea.
I mean, Laura, was it you that put something on on Facebook saying that this is just exactly the wrong way to lose weight?
Yes. Yeah. I'm not trying to say that I'm any sort of authority on the matter at all. I'm clearly not. But I know loads of personal trainer friends and dietitians who have all just gone, no, surely you need to teach people about nutrition and health and not about losing weight. And yeah, it's just not, just cutting calories for calories' sake is not a good idea.
I read that really because what it was saying that your body needs a certain amount of calories to keep going, and the more the greater your weight, the more your body needs to just maintain itself. And so what you need to do is you need to reduce that sensibly and in stages. And just going straight down to 800 calories a day is just not the way to do it.
No, not at all. You make yourself ill.
There is some evidence that if you develop type 2 diabetes and you go on to an absolute crash diet, a massive crash diet for a number of weeks, then it sort of gives your pancreas a rest and it can reboot and start again and get going again if you get it right at the very beginning. But the other thing, of course, is that diabetes, type 2 diabetes, is nothing to do with calories. It's to do with sugars and carbohydrates. And sort of, I don't know what this 800 calorie diet, what's that doing in terms of sugars and carbohydrates?
Is it not just another thing though that they've done where they've gone, look, free stuff, aren't we amazing? Hoping that people go, yeah, free stuff.
I mean, it strikes me as being one of the most irresponsible and stupid things I've ever heard, and sort of they do much better to sort of make rules about the crap that people are allowed to put into the processed food that we're all eating, and not coming up with gimmicks like this. Thank you very much. Laura, what's your moment of the week?
Well, my moment of the week had to be the tragic loss of Chadwick Boseman, the actor who played King.
I've never heard of him.
We're going to have to educate you, John. He most famously was King T'Challa in the Black Panther movie from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he was incredible. He also played Jackie Robinson, who was the first African-American baseballer. He, not only that though, he kind of went across the world and did loads of humanitarian work, and his speeches were really encouraging, and he really fought for civil rights movements, things like that. And he was diagnosed with cancer 4 years ago and didn't tell anyone. So it was, I don't know, the things that kind of come out after somebody passes away are usually quite lovely, but this was just really impressive, and it just makes it really sad because I think he still had so much to offer the world, and I'm sure Black Panther got plenty of watches this weekend. We'll certainly be watching it again when I'm ready. I'm not quite ready yet to watch it again. No, he'll never do it again, but yeah, he was wonderful. Seems like a genuinely nice guy and somebody we could all really learn a lot from.
Respect and sympathy to the family as well. It's very sad when somebody dies young. Stuart, moment of the week.
Oh, the new BBC boss, Tim Davie. He's threatened to boot off any comedy show that's a little bit too left wing. So he's cracking down on the Boris jokes.
We're not going to get our BBC show.
No.
I thought they were already banned.
So, I mean, to be honest, it shows you the kind of sphere of influence the left had at the BBC. If all they could find was a comedy show, get rid of. So
That's a really good point.
exactly, there's all the evidence that it's biased to the right.
Ooh.
I mean, this. I was worried about this because I think there's a difference between getting at the government and getting at the Tories. Now, of course, it is a Tory government, but I'm very worried when sort of, we're going to have to be, if we're going to have a joke at the expense of the government, well, we've got to have a joke at the expense of the Labour Party as well, which sort of, the news quiz went through a phase of trying to do. And we just got to be nasty about Jeremy Corbyn because we're being nasty about Boris Johnson. And sort of it's different. It's sort of yes, it is the Tories, but it's the government, and sort of I think stopping people laughing at the government is a very worrying thing altogether. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think I think people are overreacting. I mean, people are saying, "Oh, golly, it's going to be Bernard Manning and Jim Davison." I don't think they mean that.
But I hope not.
What an awful thought.
Isn't it that the Tories just aren't funny?
They're not very good at making memes, are they? We're much better at the memes, I think.
I think the thing is that people are talking about striking down and striking upwards, and there's something that when you've got somebody who's up on a pedestal and you start making jokes at their expense, can be genuinely funny. And in a way, they're up there, they deserve it. But a lot of right-wing humour is about striking down at groups who really can't look after themselves, and minority groups, and sort of laughing at people's weaknesses and misfortunes is an awful lot, obviously, of right-wing humour, because it's very sort of individualistic and fascist based. So I don't see that it's just not funny. It's worrying times there, and sort of I hope that one thing it might see is that Farage isn't on Question Time quite so often. If we're looking at political bias and sort of trying to level it out more often. Paul Daly, moment of the week.
My moment of the week, I'm going to go for like the strongman image having to be defended at all costs. So you've got like Putin who rides around bareback on his horse, and you've got like Trump wants to be a strong man, but the ridiculousness of the strong man kind of image is that in the USA, like Trump's denying that he's had a stroke, and I think that's an awful thing to like someone made up a lie that he's had a stroke, and and they've reacted to that because it was a Twitter rumor, and he's, oh no, I haven't had a stroke, I'm a strong man. And it's like, well, it's not exactly being a strong man not having a stroke, so. And then like, oh, Joe Biden, oh well, he likes cars, and they're not these two very like elderly men who are quite privileged. They're not those type of people. It's just a really strange thing. We've got these like kind of this strong man kind of image. We've got Boris Johnson in the UK. He's meant to be a strong man because he didn't die of coronavirus, and it's just like I'm not saying that like any of this kind of discourse should be talked about in politics. I just think we've gone quite ridiculous on it, where it's all about health, and Boris Johnson can do a press up, Trump can like not have a stroke,
walk down the slope. He can walk down the slope.
He can walk down slopes, and it's quite horrible, really, that we're talking about people's health as if like in fitness to govern. I don't really like it. I think we need to get back to talking about issues and how to do it. I don't think that left-wing politics will ever take hold properly again if we continue down this like kind of macho man route. And I remember when Keir Starmer mentioned that he could do some press-ups against Boris Johnson, and I was just thinking, what is going on here? Like, why are we talking about this? It's very silly.
It is moved towards dictatorship. That's the whole point. It's sort of way back to the Mao Zedong, Kim Jong-un, and the rule of the hero. And in fact, you're absolutely correct. It's sort of, I mean, if you lived in America now, having to choose between Biden and Trump, I mean, which, if it is all down to the personality, which of those two? I mean, God's sake.
It's a bit strange, because I had a conversation at work today, and someone who's been watching a bit of QAnon was saying, who's that one who sniffs children's hair? And I was like, I think you mean Joe Biden. Because he has like kind of on videos that kind of lingered on him sniffing children's hair. And I don't think he means anything by it. I think he's a bit touchy, isn't he? But then you've got Donald Trump, who has very, very strange, let's say he's said some very strange things about his own daughter. So, like, it's very disappointing that we're talking about, people in this way?
Perhaps we need to refocus on manifestos and platforms rather than
Policies.
policies rather than people. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you. Okay, smashing moments of the week, people. With a bit of luck, we'll be talking about Trump next week, because I keep putting it on the list, and the reignition of the Trump electoral bandwagon is something surely which we're going to have to chat about sometime, but they just won't let us. They choose other subjects for us. And let's start with the big story.
Now it's time for the big story.
And indeed it is. And this week, people, we have two big stories for you, because neck and neck in the poll, sort of were the return to school and the scrapping, Germany scrapping Brexit. So let's start with the return to school, and let's talk to, we have two teachers. And so let's see. Sam, I'm going to come to you first. Are you happy about the return to school? Are you happy that your children are going to be safe? Did they go off today, or sort of like, is it when did they go back? What's happening? Tell us all about your side of things as a parent.
I have got all three of my children going back tomorrow. The logistics of picking up and dropping off are like, I'm going to need to get a second degree to work out how I'm going to do this. But I mean, it's such a mixture of feelings. Particularly my 4-year-old is desperate to go back. She is a social animal. She wants to be there. I think the boys would rather stay at home. But on top of everything else, the boys, I've got a 6-year-old and a 9. Yes, a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. Yeah, I once gave the wrong ages to a newspaper and felt terrible about it afterwards because it got printed. Yeah, 6-year-old and a 9-year-old.
Sam, don't worry about it. They change all the time. They're absolute nightmares. You know.
And they are both autistic, so there's extra complications. They would have started their transition to their next year at Easter when everything went wrong. So their transition between year groups is usually a very long, prolonged experience. And at this time, they're going to go into a brand new school with all different rules that is going to be like hugely different. And I don't know how they're going to respond to that. So I'm not concerned for them for COVID. I think the noise behind me, if you can hear that, is my husband sorting out all the school uniform. I'm not worried about them for COVID because on balance of risk, you know, we live in Shildon, we're not in the middle of a city, the school's done great work in preparing, they've got like risk assessments all over the place, and I believe they're doing their best. My concerns end up being lumped in the special educational needs side of things. Are the teaching assistants going to be pulled out of their duties to do things like supervise one-way systems and keep hold of doors and all of the extra sort of processes that have got to be in place for, you know, because it's going to be things like if a child goes to the toilet, they're going to have to go out and clean the toilet after they've used it, and it'll be the teaching assistant that's got to do that, you know. So that's where my concern is for my autistic children's mental health, and that they are going to be catered for appropriately. And again, I love their school and I believe their school is going to do the best they possibly can, but I know they didn't have the resources they needed, and I don't believe the resources are forthcoming to deal with all the extra stuff they need to do. So that's my main worry, but they are going, and I'm going to really enjoy the peace and quiet tomorrow.
Just before I move to Paul and talk about teachers, do you think that most parents will comply and send their children back? Do you sense that there's going to be a sort of that, in a way, but people are sort of saying this is a test case for Boris. Do you think that Boris is going to get his way and most parents are just going to bung their children off to school?
Yeah, there's very little talk among parents about not sending their kid back because of COVID. It's not a conversational sort of thread that I've seen. Everybody, and partly that's an economic decision. You know, parents need to get back to work. They feel very strongly they need their space to do the things that they need to do in their life. And a lot of people's lives have been turned totally upside down by the fact that they've had to have their kids home for the last 5 months with no support from the government to do so. So, yes, I think most people will send them back. Obviously, the questions will then come about the schools, which are still need to find a balancing act between encouraging attendance but also being COVID safe. And we already, before all this, had trouble with schools balancing, because attendance is such a huge thing that schools are judged on. We had schools sort of bending the rules to get kids back in before bouts of diarrhea and sickness because they were so worried about their attendance figures before all this. So it's going to be really tricky to balance that idea of having kids off for 2 weeks if they've got symptoms, but also trying to keep their attendance up. It's again, there's been very little guidance given to schools on how to navigate that.
I mean, is it the Labour Party that's trying to persuade the government to sort of do away with fines for non-attendance for a while? So I read that from the newspaper. I think
I'm not sure. I mean, I personally think the idea for fines for non-attendance was a non-starter to start with. In normal times, you move the argument for attendance from a moral one to a financial one, so it's just rules for poor people. So yeah, I don't know whether that is a policy platform we're standing on at the moment. I'm frustrated about the lack of policies we seem to have at the moment.
Thank you very much. Well, sort of moment of the week next week, Sam, will have to be an update on back to school. It really will. It's been a success. Sorry, Paul, teachers from the sort of. Now I was watching the BBC News tonight, and they had a couple of teachers on who were very excited at going back, and they said, "This is what we do. This is what we're good at. At last, we can start doing it again." Sort of. Do you sense tremendous negativity in the teaching profession, or are they all like the BBC teachers and pleased to be back with the children?
I can only speak from my own experiences. I've been in today, and basically it was just like we're all just a little bit sick of the fact that we feel like we're being lied to. So we've got this situation where we're going back, and we know we're going to have children in there. And we know we're going to have packed classrooms, and we know that even if you're wearing a mask or protective equipment, which you weren't really allowed to until this most recent U-turn, even in those cases, any prolonged exposure, everyone's going to get it. All the scientists say if you're in a room, if there's one person in the room, if you leave an hour later, pretty much the likelihood is everyone's going to get it. Now, they've decided to do this because they want the children looked after. There were a number of ways they could have done this. They could have said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the class sizes, and we'll have some of the staff can teach remotely, like they have been for half the week, and some could be physically there, and you could have a bit of a balance so there's more room. Or you could have brought community centres into it and said, well, we'll use community centres and we'll use these spaces just to make sure that the lack of transmission, to try and encourage that as much as we can. But they've decided no, because we don't want to show that reduced class sizes are a good idea, because this government has been building up class sizes for years and years and years now, and they don't want to create jobs for more staff, because they've been trying to cut education spending. I wish they'd just admit it. This is a risky situation. We're likely to get it, and this is likely to increase cases of COVID nationwide. You've seen what's happened in Dundee with the huge increase in cases. And you know what? Teachers are going to go in, and if they're going to get it, they're going to go in and they might feel absolutely terrible about it. But they're going to get it. We're realistic people. We know what is going on. We understand that maybe the government want the nation to go back to work. I actually think that if they wanted to protect the economy, they probably should have done things a little bit more sensibly in the first place, because they've done the worst of both worlds. But if you want teachers to go back because we're so vital to the economy, just be honest with us. Don't lie to us and say it's safe, because it isn't.
Jeremy Hunt was on the news tonight saying that teachers are going to be tested twice a week. Have you heard anything about being tested regularly?
I spoke to my head teacher today, and he said that there is talk of perhaps being tested once a week, but he hasn't had any confirmation on that. The only recent updates were that in secondary schools, which mine is, that basically you have to treat the children as if they're adults. So you know how they're saying there's lower transmission between children. They're not counting teenagers, and that teenagers are more like adults. So we're in a situation where we've got lots of people packed into a room. It's likely to spread. Watch out for a second wave, because I think that's the only thing that's really been staving it off is the schools not being fully open. But we'll go in, we'll do our jobs. And we're in this very, very odd situation as well, where we've had a conversation today, and my head teacher, I really feel for him. He's had all the pressure put on him. The government is saying it's down to head teachers to solve this problem, and they're liable if anything goes wrong. But they're in a situation where if so many of us are off, then we'll have to shut the school. But we don't want to shut the school. They're not allowed to shut the school. This causes problems. They might be in trouble if we shut the school. So the advice is, there's no advice around like, oh, what happens if a teacher gets COVID? Do you come in or not? Do we self-isolate like we were before? When they were saying, oh, if you've got symptoms. Actually, they're kind of going along the lines of, well, you don't know whether it's COVID or not, so you should come in. And that's where the teaching profession is. We're not even doing what we were doing at the beginning, which wasn't working. We are going to be just coming in, soldiering on like we do. If you feel a little bit unwell, still come in, but don't come in, but do come in, but don't though, because you're not allowed to, but you have to. It's just that whole go to work, don't go to work, go to work, don't go to work that Boris Johnson was doing before. It's that thing, really. They want us to go in, and that's where we are.
A bit of a whistle and hope. And same thing next week. We'll see how it's going in the schools. Scotland, they're having one or two problems with schools sort of coming down with this. Laura, as a mother, are you full of joy? This is right? Because we always used to be as teachers at the end of the long summer holidays. Parents used to leave us for a while.
Yeah, and I do get that sentiment. I'd love to be in a position where I'm sending my kids off happy, and I can come home and work from home in peace. That's not the case. So it's been so long since I've been in school, and my son's quite clingy anyway, as I've been warned that young boys normally are. And I'm terrified about sending him back to nursery, because he wasn't happy at the best of times going in, but now they've changed his teacher and he hasn't had the opportunity to meet them. Now there's a new process whereby I have to stand at the top of the school gates and send him in and go, have a lovely day. And there's just not a chance that he's going to do that. And then I've got to get my daughter up to her school in 5 minutes so she's on time. So the logistics of it and the grief and the guilt, it's going to be horrendous. I'm hoping for the best.
Just one day I had to take my granddaughter to school. Just one day I had to stand in and take my granddaughter to nursery, and it was the same in the school before COVID. I got to the gate and sort of said, all right, off you go. Well, it's harder said than done. And picking her up was even worse, because I picked her up, said, hi, let's go. She ran flat on her face. 3 steps. Wow. No. So,
there should be people employed to do the school run, I think.
At the end of my taking to school.
If we were Boris Johnson, we would have somebody employed to do
You're
the school.
absolutely right.
Steve P in the comments says he's going to walk one child and send the other one by catapult to get them where they need to be on time. I need a catapult.
So it's amazing that people are watching. Hello, it's great to see.
Yes.
Very much.
14 people watching.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. By the way,
Yes, please do share it about. Sorry.
Any comments before we move on?
Just nervous for my daughter that going back to school won't be the experience that she's expecting. You know, she's gonna imagine one thing, she's gonna get something very different.
Yeah.
That's interesting because sort of many of the children who thrive on meeting other children, they're sort of, I never thought of that.
Yeah. Melody was like, "Oh, we're gonna have the soft toys." No, there will be no soft toys. Sorry.
Paul, very briefly.
just on what Stuart was saying, like, I think a lot of the push has been to, it's going to be better for children's mental health. What would be much, much, much better for children's mental health would be to totally take the pressure off schools, get rid of league tables, get rid of punitive exams, and really start to nurture children instead of just putting them through things that were designed in the 1800s. You know, it's a lot of, when we've gone back today and we've got our results, and you know, you've done all this meticulous marking and you've got years of it and you've got data going back and back and back, and you think, well, you know, you never know when you might need it, you never know when you might want to track someone and how important it might be. How much evidence were we asked for? Nothing. We wrote something on a page and ranked them. That was it. That was it for that whole 5 years that we had those children in there. And at the end of that, the work they did, it was on our word, which, okay, we'd like it that way. We like to be trusted. But if you've got a league table situation, that's very manipulable. And also, you know, what was the point in all that data we've got on those kids that we've got, like, you know, it's saved on a computer. We could have emailed it into the exam boards, but instead we paid the exam boards for doing nothing.
Stuart, was that a sign that you wanted to say something?
No. You know, I'm not a teacher. I don't know a great deal about this. I'm just a, you know, end user parent.
It's a worry. But what we'll do is we'll catch up next week, and and if you're listening in, sort of 4 families here, all with children, sort of 2 of them with teaching experience, 1 of them actually teaching. This will be interesting to see. This is grassroots information that you're getting on how things are going, and we'll monitor the news and get the wider picture as well. Now the other big picture was, by the way, Paul, has Simon Hocking asked to come and join us? Is he in the waiting room?
No.
Right. If
he's watching.
He's watching.
No, I said if he's watching. I don't know if he is.
Right.
If he's watching, you're welcome in. It's the same link.
It's the same link. I'll try. Can somebody who's better than cleverer than me at this kind of thing? Can you, Laura? Are you able to break off and just
I'll try
the link and sort of ready for him? Oh no, Laura, you can't do it. Stop.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm still here.
You're our lead person on the Brexit question.
Yeah, thanks for that.
After Simon Hocking. I'll start with Stuart for a while. We'll let Stuart talk about Brexit. Stuart, is Brexit a disaster about to happen?
Obviously, isn't it? I mean, look at the lineup of characters that we've got sorting it out for us. You know, I've not got high hopes. It will have to be a miracle to come out, you know, oven baked, you know, as the one said.
Oven ready deal, easiest deal in history.
So, Laura, you ready? Sort of.
Yes, I'm here. I've messaged it. It's Simon. If you're watching, it should be in your messenger.
He's ready to come in when we're ready.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
lovely.
cool. Yeah, well, so, hi, Simon. Hang on there. We'll be with you in 2 ticks. Laura, talk to us about, I mean, I don't get the idea that you think this is a surprise that we're sort of stumbling towards a no-deal disaster Brexit.
No, absolutely not. And so I've been doing a little bit of. I wanted to be a bit non-partisan, so I've been watching a lot of blogs, reading a bit of stuff on both sides of the argument. Do you know, I've learned a hell of a lot. I'll be honest. Obviously, our transition period is due to end on the 31st of December, when we have to have a deal or no deal. Angela Merkel this week has said that she is going to, well, she said what's the word she used? Hang on. There's been no tangible progress in talks on the Brexit deal. And so she wanted to scrap it from the agenda of the EU Ambassadors Summit, which was due to take place tomorrow. So that won't be talked about anymore. Basically, I think they're a bit fed up that nothing's happening and nothing's moving. There is, however, another argument that there's a stalemate on the issue of state aid, and the EU wanting a level playing field as far as state aid is concerned, and also on British fisheries, and that is more likely to be the issue and the reason why nothing's moving forward. I've had to sit and learn about state aid and all of that, because I kind of know a bit, but not a great deal, and I won't bang on about it too much tonight. But essentially, state aid it prevents private companies from getting an unfair advantage, competitive advantage from support from the government. The impression I'm getting is that the EU has quite stringent rules on that. If you're a member of the EU, you can't do that for companies within your own country. And our government want to go, no. We want to be able to help our companies, which seems on the face of it a really good thing. We want to help the people from here. But given the history of Tories and the kind of companies they ordinarily help out, I think it would end up being a really bad thing. And I think they absolutely have been hoping for a no deal all along, so that they can implement this. If they go through the World Trade Organization's rules around state aid, they're a lot more relaxed and they can get away with a lot more. And I think that essentially is where we're heading and why we're going for a no deal Brexit. And they will continue to say it's the EU's fault.
Do you think that that he's going this way on purpose? So the whole thing. I mean, he'll want to blame Europe, but at the end of the day, it'll fit in exactly what he wants.
Yeah, and those arguments are already being put in place. We're blaming Europe because they are trying to take away our civil liberties, because they want to come and ruin our fishing industry that has been so amazing for so many years, and they want to keep our seas so they can fish themselves. And actually, I think this has been set up for a while. Obviously, I'm not a Brexit expert, but I've been picking a lot up recently, and honestly, I do think this is where we've been heading since day one. I think Boris has known all along that this will serve his purpose going forward.
Do you think that we need to fear a no-deal Brexit, or sort of? I mean, what they're saying is that a no-deal Brexit is just what the country needs, and we'll have the opportunity to sort of move forward and become Great Britain again.
Well, I thought we had an oven ready deal. I thought that was the point of electing Boris Johnson, because he had an oven ready deal and it was all fine and everything was going to be great. I am not someone who thinks that the EU are absolutely miraculously brilliant and will solve all our problems. I'm sympathetic to some people who have real concerns over the way the EU treat people in the Mediterranean, for example, the way they treat refugees, the way they treated Greece. They put Greece into a lot of debt, which wasn't necessary in my view. I don't think that's the way to work. We've seen in the build up to World War II what putting a country into a lot of debt can do, and the kind of problems it cause. But I think there was probably a much more sensible Brexit we could have done. Personally, for me, I would have done something a little bit transitional. So I would have, if I was in charge of the Labour Party, while we had that policy debate, I would have probably said, let's just say to people, we'll go out on a Norway straight away, and then we're out. You know, you can do that. That was an off the peg deal. You could have done that. You could have just been out and then said, actually, over time, we'll negotiate other things, because all these things, you know, it's uncertainty over time. But if you negotiate in little bits and pieces over time, you can build up your own bespoke deal that would be different from what Norway have got. But, you know, you've got that little bit of time to do that. And in 10, 15, 20 years, if it's not working out, you can maybe have another referendum to see if you want to go back in or whether you like it outside. That would have been a really sensible bit of politics. We didn't see very much sensible politics during, like, following the decisive, well, it wasn't hugely decisive, but it was a decisive referendum. But the way things are going now, what Laura was talking about with the state aid things, the interesting thing for me was Priti Patel was forced to resign or sacked. I can't remember whether she was officially sacked or whether she was forced to resign, but she did leave with a smirk on her face, because she was allegedly negotiating with Israel over spending the state aid, the foreign aid budget, on military support for Israel. She seems to be quite central to the plans at the moment. I really, really, really don't trust what's going on with this government.
Sam, sort of the final word here, round us up. Sort of what strikes me about it is that I was deeply critical of the EU. It's a nasty neoliberal organisation. But what I fear we're being manipulated into is something worse than that. Where I fear we're just going to fall prey to American corporations. Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? I mean, am I wrong there in that? Yeah.
Well, I keep joking that there's a social media game called Corrupt a Wish, where you say something really good and it's other people's job to make it bad. And I feel like a lot of conservative policy is that, like, we're going to unify the benefit system to make it so that you only have to apply once to get all of your benefits, but it's going to be universal credit and you're going to get a lot less money than you would otherwise, you know. And Brexit is one of those things, you know. We're going to break free from the EU, which do terrible things, which were very anti-democratic and made Greece go back on their own referendum about austerity and tax them to death. But what are we having instead? And like you said, the powers in the world that we are going to be cozying up to instead are going to be America and China. Going back to what I was saying about food and obesity before, you know, the American food industry is built on getting people to consume unhealthy things. And one of the first things they would like to do is change our nutritional labeling, so that you can't have an informed choice when you go to the supermarket. You can't see what's in things. Get rid of our traffic light system. They don't like that because it makes it too easy for you to see what's good for you and what's not good for you in the supermarket. And other things, you know. As you know, I'm an avid chicken keeper, and the way that they keep the livestock standards for America are significantly less good than they are in Europe. And I'm very much in favour of our farmers, and I worry that our farmers are going to basically be outpriced, underpriced, undercut, there you go, by the American farmers. So I will also highlight
for Brexit then. I mean, the sort of the farming community was massively in favour of Brexit. Why did they vote for it if they're going to be destroyed by it?
Yeah, I mean, and it's an interesting thing that farmers are demographically generally vote Conservative. And there's a huge culture thing about being self-sufficient, about not relying on other people, and the fact that whenever there is welfare sort of stuff going on, farmers kind of get left out. So that was a shame, and it was a shame that the Farmers Union ended up coming out, Remain, but came out too late to really make a difference. So the light at the end of the tunnel is got to be that, you know, this is going to become less of a central issue in our elections. Unfortunately, that partly is because we're going to be recovering from the aftermath of this pandemic, and people are going to really be focused on literally where their meals are coming from. And hopefully, although we've talked about this before, I'm not hugely optimistic, hopefully it'll help some people be a bit kinder and understand that some people find themselves in hardship for reasons that they can't control. Fingers crossed. So that's the light at the end of the tunnel for me, is that we are moving through this. We need to go through it to get out of it. So, and I will be glad when it's over and when we can talk about policies again, and every election isn't about who is a leaver and who's a remainer.
Thank you so much for that summary at the end, and I think I agree with you there. Sort of everything's so polarized at the moment, and we can't. Okay, let's Simon in. Can we let Simon in?
Yeah. And do we do a jingle?
Do we have a jingle?
Not a specific one, but we could do this one.
No, Paul, don't, because we have our other storage jingle, which we're going to use in a moment.
Hey, Simon.
Simon Hocking. Welcome to the jingle there. We get into the point, Simon, where you're the only person who's prepared to come on and ask.
Okay. Yeah, we've got Mark as well. Mark will come on.
All right, you have to do it next week, because we definitely not got many. Simon, pose the dream team your question, and then I'm thinking you've got some thoughts on it as well.
So my question is the automotive industry being forgotten about, and what should the government do about it?
Right, dream team. Do any of you know anything about this at all?
A little bit.
Hey, Paul, thank God for that.
Well, the answer is yes. Yes, they are being forgotten about, and a lot of the vote around, like, you know, the 2019 election was around this very almost playing up to this idea that we'll be this big industrial power again, because I think people have this nostalgic view of Britain being an industrial power, and I would love to see us at the forefront of industry as well, manufacturing, production. I would like to see that being a very green thing. And at Nissan, for example, where a lot of people in our constituency and other places around the Northeast work, we've got the Nissan Leaf, which is an excellent electric vehicle. And I feel like the government, or they were in government at the time, and I think they campaigned on something that wasn't necessarily what they really cared about. You know, they don't seem to be looking after the automotive industry. The production of cars has gone down a lot, obviously due to COVID. But it's not going to be very good when, like, the world isn't really buying new cars. The government really need to step in and support. But again, they've got this uncertain background with the no-deal Brexit potentially happening. We've just got this perfect storm of, like, well, can we leave and get cheaper labour elsewhere? Can we do that? It's not going to cost people much to try and set up elsewhere. And the worrying thing for me is the automotive industry will move elsewhere. Britain has quite a proud tradition of being automotive, of doing that as well. But again, you've got foreign companies coming in who've kept that going, and our labour's keeping it going, and our engineering skills keeping that going. But we might lose that as well.
Simon, tell us what you think about this.
So for automotive, it's a bit of a tricky one, because we're hitting a natural lull in projects for automotive. So I think the job losses you saw before COVID was really a thing, was very much to be expected. It's not something to have too much concern about. It's mainly temporary staff who got like, well, I have to add a caveat to this as well, because this is all my opinion as opposed to anything else. Because with me working in automotive, if anybody was to see this, then I don't want to cause worry or anything. But I think what the government needs to do is target the furlough for this industry in particular, because we're about 6 months to 8 months out from the next big project. And then you'll get a real lay of the land of what's going to happen jobs-wise. Because if the volumes are what predicted or anywhere even close, it's still very big volumes. A lot of people won't have to lose jobs. But the shock of it in October, because we're still 6 months out from a big project, could force more jobs to go because the volumes just aren't there in sales at the moment.
So what do you mean by the big project? What's the big project in 6 months?
So the the new Qashqai model is due to come out around about April time, April, May. So if they can sort of hop along till that, then there's a lot of hope for a lot of the supply chain at Nissan to sort of keep people on, but they'll need support because the volumes have dropped right off. And as soon as volumes drop off in supply in automotive, people lose jobs. There's just no profit in actual automotive. It relies heavily on the volume of the project. So you need like a few 100,000 pieces on multiple parts to sort of even sustain any level of like employment in the industry.
Sam, have you any thoughts on this?
I mean, obviously coming from Shildon, we know firsthand what it's like to be at the brunt of the Tories' free marketeering when it comes to the British industry, British manufacturing industry. Of course, in 1984, we lost 80% of our jobs in Shildon when the wagon works closed. Now, there are arguments about economies change, and but we do need the government to recognise that these skilled jobs are really linked to people's self-esteem. It's really linked to people's like having high expectations for them and their family going into the future. So if it is no longer viable for these things to operate for one reason or another, if it is linked to trade across the world and it's just not viable in this country, they really need to look at how those people are kept in a skilled employment, and that they are we are encouraging them to go into other similar well-paid, well-skilled jobs and not shipping them off to the new Amazon fulfillment center down the road. That's the real concern for me. The whole jobs market is changing from going to a job that you can feel proud of, that you are looked after, to this gig economy, humans are expendable, and that has a huge impact on our well-being and our communities.
I mean, that's Sammy, one of my big things, and one of Durham County Council's big things is that we need more and better jobs. And
yes.
There is this kind of dichotomy growing up between sort of at the one point saying that we want high skilled jobs, and yet sort of creating tens of thousands of, in fact, just sort of warehouseman jobs, if truth be told. And it's a very concerning thing.
And those jobs are the first ones that are going to go when automation comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just pass the buck.
Unless you are so cheap that you can undercut
that you're cheaper than a robot.
We're talking about Philippines and places out in the Far East now. Stuart, I mean, before Brexit, everybody's very frightened of Nissan. Nissan was making big threats about whether they go or not. Now the government sort of made this deal with them, which we never got to know what was about, to try and keep them. We were very scared and worried. And now the government just doesn't seem to give a fig, does it? I mean, do you understand what's going on there?
Don't. I think the government's chosen a route that it wants to take in the British economy, and it maybe doesn't need to deal with companies like Nissan anymore. But I think it's important to say that places like Newton Aycliffe is very dependent on the manufacture of parts for cars. Secondary automotive industries are like prevalent in Newton Aycliffe, and any slowdown in the sale of cars. It's just going to damage our community so much.
It is. I mean, it's not just Sunderland that will die if Nissan falls. It's much the hinterland as well, the industrial hinterland. Laura, final thought before we move back to Simon for summing up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Sunderland lass. I'm from Sunderland, and it's not lost on me that we were one of the biggest Brexiteers in terms of constituencies across.
Laura does that actually. So you carry on.
And the fact that Nissan is one of the biggest employers in Sunderland as well, and essentially that it might move on if we have a no deal Brexit. I think a lot of people assume that we would be Great Britain and we would fund industry, and the cars we make here would be sort of world beaten cars. So yeah, in answer to Simon's question, I do think there have been betrayed or let down, whichever way you want to put it. But I also think that, we've missed a trick here. Yes, the Leaf is made here, but we should be looking at full electrification of all cars, because actually that's going to be green. It's going to use skills that people have got who've been made redundant previously in other jobs. We could really make a huge deal of this, and we could be world leaders in this. I know someone who she worked in fitting the charging stations for those things, and they were told, we don't want that many of these because we don't want people to be buying them. And it goes back to the whole oil argument. We need people to be buying this commodity, so we don't want to be selling electric cars. But if we did that, I do think that we could be well beaten at electric cars, and we could be green, and there'd be a huge industry for it, and we've got the talent and the skills here. That's another big thing that we're being let down on at the minute, and I think we really need to be looking at that. I don't trust this particular government to give two craps about it, to be perfectly honestly. I don't think they'll look at it twice. I don't think they'll care. They seem to be quite happy to make promises and then renege on them.
I think you're absolutely correct. There was an awful lot of talk about the Green Industrial Revolution from both the parties, but I hear nothing in the Tories' recovery about a Green New Deal or anything similar to that. I mean, when we came out of the 2009 recession, the government introduced a scrappage scheme, and so it was to encourage people to scrap their own car and buy a new car. And what I had really hoped, and if Paul Howell's listening, this is a really good idea, Paul. And what I really hoped was that the government would introduce a scrappage scheme which encouraged people to give up their old cars and get an electric car, and Nissan Leaf, for instance, and sort of that would sort of be such an opportunity, and it's just not happened. So it's a disappointment, is that, and it's a worry as well.
Well, they're not cheap as well, and on purpose they are very, very expensive cars to buy. Electric cars, hybrids less so, but if you want an electric car, a lot of them are quite expensive, and so it prices normal people out of the market.
Sort of over the life of the car, they are much cheaper. It's sort of the capital cost up front with it, running cost. Fantastic. I've got one, I tell you.
But again, it does price people out of the market. Like it's a whole other argument as well, isn't it? There's initially inexpensive things cost more in the long run, and it's always the people who don't have enough money who have to pay the higher interest levels on the mortgage, or have to pay rent and can't even get a mortgage, or can't put the initial outlay on an electric car, even though in the long run it would be less expensive. It's the way our system's set up. It's like, if you've got money, things are cheaper for you. That's the way things work.
I mean, we've had the BEEP scheme, this Durham County Council BEEP scheme in the news recently, and that's exactly the same. That it sort of firms it you've got to replace your boiler. A cheap gas guzzler is we haven't got the money for the more expensive heat exchange technology and things like that. Simon, bring this to a close. Tell us sort of where we've all been going wrong, and solve the problems of the world for this, Simon.
I think I'll end on a bit more of a positive note for this one. I think for Nissan, the new Qashqai is a bit too long in the tooth for them to pull out of Sunderland. I know all the work's been awarded to UK supply. I know the work's there, and if this far out from launch, I can't see them pulling out. I hope they don't, but I just don't see. I think it'd be a logistical nightmare to do it now.
So
other point,
these are here to stay, but what you want to see is support for the workers to help them keep them on until
until that happens. All because there's been a shock to the system that wasn't expected, and the volumes have dropped right off because of COVID. All they need to do is help the automotive industry limp through for another 6 to potentially 12 months, but target the support. Don't just have it as a rip the band-aid off and expect everything to return to normal.
So
that's the main thing.
A furlough scheme which is differentiated to the industry.
Ultimately, because it just needs to hop along. It's all it needs to do. It needs a little bit of a push, waiting for these new things to kick off. There's I quote on work all day at work, and there is positives there. I can't go into obviously for the job that I do, but there is positives there to take from it, leading into the next couple of years. And it's just a matter of helping the industry get along to that point.
And it makes sense, doesn't it, Simon? Because there's some industries and areas of the economy which have actually boomed during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And sort of it makes sense that we don't have a kind of one-size-fits-all furlough scheme. That we have a scheme which sort of recognises that different industries have different. And of course, our MP Paul Howell, he is on the committee which is overseeing this kind of thing in the northeast, the levelling up process in the northeast. Yeah. Maybe sort of Paul, I know you listen to this programme, because it is a major influence on Tory policy. I do it with you all, and I want you to hear what Simon's saying here, Paul. These nice words from Simon. We're going to say goodbye to you.
And he's blue collar as well, which he's a blue collar conservative.
Cowboy collar, Paul. Sort of. So we're not going back to the days of the cowboy, and that's all there is to it.
What's the difference between white collar and blue collar workers? For me, it's when you have your shower. Those who shower before work are white collar. Those who have to shower after are blue collar.
No, that's not a bad analogy for it. Yeah, I'll give you that one.
Right, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have to shower both before and after.
Do you get that sweaty as an accountant?
Think of
hard day at the accountant or owning a house.
Being a landlord.
Okay. God bless, Simon. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks
See you
for
soon,
having us.
Simon.
Thank you.
Last question, very briefly. We have overrun significantly. I'm going to.
Not really, because it's just an hour now. Because we were late.
Well, we could finish, but we want to talk about Jacob Blake before we go. Is that all right, Paul? Can we do that?
That was brilliant. It was worth it just for that. Thanks, guys.
Stuart, can you believe, Stuart, that after everything and the situation, to tell us the situation, we still are shooting unarmed black people in the back, in this case, as they walk to their car to go home. Sort of talk to us about Jacob Blake.
Yeah, America's police are basically telling us that they are refusing to take anything on board over the last, decade, and they're going to continue with the same type of policing that they have done time and time again. This just, reiterates why we have, Black Lives Matter activists and protesters out, because this keeps happening.
I mean, the story here is that there was a fight. Jacob Blake tried to break it up. The police arrived and he said, "Thank God you're here. I can leave it to you now." So please stop these people. And he set off to walk back to his car where his 3 children were waiting, and they shot him 7 times in the back.
6 isn't enough, clearly, is it? I mean, that's madness.
You just have to wonder about the actually, I was reading one thing, that they don't have to pass the exams that our police have to pass. The entry qualifications and the sort of academic qualifications that you need to join the US police are much, much lower than ours. And they're clearly just stupid people.
Mm. Well, there's clearly a shortage in moral, qualification for many of them.
Sam, you wanted to say something?
Sorry, yeah, I think it's always worth mentioning because we do get this very general anti-police sentiment comes out. And we have to remember what the reality in England is, that automatically, if a police officer has to discharge a firearm, there's automatically an investigation. Like, everything gets checked, double checked, and if they kill somebody, there's a complaint lodged by the police, so they can check the situation where the use of lethal force was necessary, and that's. I'm always grateful we've got that, and like you said, John, our standards for our police are very high, and our police are very keen on de-escalating things. Saying that, it's something that we have to keep an eye on, because Priti Patel has said she wants to bring in more aggressive tasers that have been, people have said, are linked to sort of all kinds of horrific things. And people have died from having a taser used on them as well. And it's obviously unpleasant and can cause problems, whatever. So we need to keep in mind that for all we can be proud of our police, and that there's still racism and stuff. There's still stuff we have to look at, but we need to keep our standards high, and we need to fight against the militarization of the police, and make sure we don't end up in that situation where they are at the moment in America. Obviously, it's terrifying, and there's been lots of black voices on social media saying, if I get pulled up by the police, I think, okay, this is the day I'm going to die, because it's likely that things are going to get out of hand. And this is one of the things we talk about when we talk about white privilege. Yeah, we're not saying that just because we are born white, our life is a bed of roses, far from it. But there are some things we don't have to worry about. And the fact that, we're going to talk about Kyle Rittenhouse, the fact that Kyle Rittenhouse could walk around with the weapon that he was using and talk to the police, and they never even checked whether he was holding it legally, just shows the difference in how white people and black people are treated in America.
Paul, talk to us about Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, sort of, what's your take on that situation there? Trump is refusing to condemn him. Trump is suggesting that he did it in self-defense in his press briefing. What's your take on that?
He's a disgusting loser. I have nothing but contempt for someone who would cross state boundaries and, with a gun and just take a gun out with him and do these absolutely dreadful things, and the idea of defending him.
Driven by his mother drove.
Well, yeah, I think perhaps he may be a victim of his upbringing. That may be the case, but I don't think people have very much sympathy for the likes of, John Venables, who murdered Jamie Bulger. I don't think people normally look into that too much when you've got murders on your hands. I don't know why. There's a lot of people trying to justify this one, and I don't really see the point in trying to justify it. I think there's a big problem in the USA with the way the police, like Samantha mentioned earlier on, that our police maybe slightly different because they don't have firearms. Perhaps we don't maybe we don't attract these far right characters who seem to be infiltrating the police in the USA on a regular basis. It seems to attract people who think they're, can take action with these weapons. If you've got that opportunity to do that.
To interrupt you, I mean, people are saying that this is the issue that is going to get Trump re-elected. I mean, what's your take on that? Trump's coming up very strong on law and order, and people are saying that whereas the Democrats, they came out for Black Lives Matter, and sort of Trump's saying that he's sorted out the law and order in Tallahassee, is it, or Colossia? I can't remember the name. Please forgive me, everybody. But I mean, do you think that this is a win situation for Trump?
I think it could be, but it's just simply because of the whole. Remember when the civil service released that statement saying about truth twisters? I think this is what's going on all the time. It's truth twisters. One of the most bizarre truth twisting things I've seen is when there was that meme around slavery, and it was saying about slavery in Britain, and we've only just finished paying off the debt of from when we abolished slavery. Really, you should be thanking us, the public, have paid for this. Actually, that was a punishment on the public to pay off 4,000 slave owners in the UK. If you think that was some sort of favour to the people who were enslaved, who got nothing, who ended up having to just live their lives and be, work and still probably work for the same people, while those other people got, in today's terms, around £30 million on average per person out of those 4,000 people, 30 million each. Dear me, what a tremendous amount of money. And they bought property and they passed it down to their ancestors and they ended up in the House of Lords. And these are the things that annoy people. And this is why people still see the legacy of slavery. But that truth is twisted around to being, oh, weren't we jolly good back in the day when we were paid slave owners because they had some property and we reimbursed them for their property. And I mean we, because we have paid taxes on that in our life that have been about reimbursing that. And that is the kind of truth twisted narrative that we've got. But people are willing to lap it up for some reason. We've got to come at this from a different angle because people need to understand what it is they're talking about, because they aren't going to educate themselves on this because they don't want to know.
So coming back to the question, Paul, do you think that Trump is going to manage to swing on this to get elected? How much of an issue do you think it's going to be?
I think he's already going to get re-elected anyway, personally. Michael Moore called the 2016 election. He was one of the few people to do so. He said in the swing states, the support for Trump is hardening, not softening. That's where we are. Actually, someone in the chat mentioned Fahrenheit 11/9, which is a really, really good film. The problem is, and I've referenced this during the week, the people who need to learn a little bit about this kind of situation aren't willing to do so. So, like, I've just read Carla's book. It's Natives. It's called Natives, and it's a really, really good book. And I think so many people would benefit from reading it, and they're not going to, because it's only going to be people like me and like other people on this call who are interested in that kind of thing and interested in that perspective. If you really need that perspective, you're not going to go looking for it.
Last question of the evening. Laura, do you think Black Lives Matter has failed?
No, not at all. I think it's highlighted issues that were already there. These kind of things have been happening for years and years, and they don't get publicity. I think just like the Me Too movement did, the Black Lives Matter movement is showing us what's actually, it's holding a mirror up to the world. And, I didn't even know what it was, and I saw the Jacob Blake video. I saw him getting shot, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. It was absolutely devastating. He didn't deserve that. And then to have a young man walking through the streets with an assault weapon, clearly intent on using it, had already used it to walk past police officers and not even be acknowledged. That shows the clear divide. It shows how much work we've still got to do. Going back to the moment of the week, right back to bring it back to the beginning of the show. Chadwick Boseman was a big advocate for equality. We've got Black Lives Matter now. We've had anti-apartheid. We've had the civil rights movement. These things keep coming up because they're necessary. And anything that can highlight these issues that for me are obvious issues when you're presented with them. Anyone who can retort with, well, all lives matter, clearly are missing the point. And we need to keep driving that point home, because these people, I can't say I've had I've had a pretty perfect life, and I'm white, and I could probably walk down the street with a knife and someone might go, should you have that? If I was black, I'm pretty damn sure that wouldn't happen. There'd be a different story there to tell. And I know that as a white person, and I'm not offended by that, and I don't feel, angry about that, except to feel angry for the people who don't get the same privilege. And the whole thing has just upset me so much. The fact that people, there's an argument that the Black Lives Matter movement is causing friction and problem. Damn right it's causing friction and problem. If you had been treated this way for centuries and your family had been treated this way, damn right I'd get into a fight about it. And we should all stand up and be allies with them. And we should keep, whether we move on to something else, whether it's Black Lives Matter or in the next movement, we should all be behind them because it's important.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to ignore you. I realise that what you'd have to say would be a gem, but we're way out of time. And I've got something I want to say as well. I'm going to bite my tongue as well. I thought it was a lovely message from Laura. I'm going to finish the show on that. Just to point out, we're going to be playing out the No Pass Around as usual. And
we aren't, because I don't know how to do that when we're doing it on YouTube.
Right, so we're going to be playing out the No Pass Around. I'll tell you what.
Someone could type it in
later. Edit it in later. So
I could do that.
Yeah. So we're going to play out to No Pass Around, and never was there such a more important message about fascism, no pass around, than just today, dreadfully worrying situations. Thank you, Dream Team. Stuart, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
You're fabulous as always, Stuart. God bless you. Sam, really today, spot on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay. Laura, lovely first word and last word. And you've got that kind of, let's tie it all up and make it sort of...
I'm the bookend.
Thank you to Simon Hocking, who isn't here, of course. Goodbye. And to the boss of all bosses, without you, nothing. Paul, goodbye. God bless.
Thanks, and thanks to everyone who's commented, because we've had an unusual show tonight. We've changed platform, and people did that, and there've been some really lovely comments, so we'll try and address them.
Thank you.
Are we going to sort of have to no pass around? Are we going to stay around the bit and take some of that?
Well, I've got work in the morning, John, and we're already at the limit of where we would have gone to. So I think this is coming to a close.
Comments, and God bless you all. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for listening in difficult circumstances. I hope some of you will be listening to the podcast. Goodbye. God bless.